Good morning. This is John from the Springs Mennonite Church, and I'm here today to share with you a story from Mark chapter 10. And let's take a look at it. We'll start with verse 35, and we'll read a few of the verses, not all of them, to 45. 35 starts when James and John, the sons of Zebedee, came over and spoke to him. Teacher, they said, we want you to do us a favor. And Jesus said, well, what's your request? They replied, when you sit on your glorious throne, we want to sit in the places of honor next to you. One on your right, the other on the left. But Jesus said to them, you don't know what you're asking. Are you able to drink from the bitter cup of suffering I'm about to drink? Are you able to be baptized with the baptism of suffering that I must be baptized with? And they said, oh, yes, we're able. All right, let's stop here a second. James and John have traveled with Jesus for a long time now. They've seen his teachings. They know what his life is about. And somehow, for some crazy reason, they get in their heads that they want to ask him for the best seats in heaven. Well, I guess, probably a good seat to have. But the thought of everything Jesus has done and said, and now these two want to be special. And so Jesus said, you don't know what you're asking. And, oh, yeah, we know. No, you don't know, he says. Are you willing to get baptized with the same baptism of suffering that I'm going to experience? Oh, yeah, we can do it. James and John are acting very much like most human beings here. There's not an ounce of humility in them in this request. There's not any sense of we're not entitled to this stuff in their request. They want the best seats. They want to be closest to Jesus. Now he goes on to say that it's not his decision, it's God's, and so he can't answer them. But it's interesting because when the other 10 disciples hear about this, how do you think they feel? How would you feel if you'd been one of those 10? Well, verse 41 tells us, when the other 10 disciples heard what James and John had asked, they were indignant. I bet you there were more than that. Yeah, I bet you they were furious. Who do they think they are to ask such a thing? When each one of them deserved a chance at it too. I guess James and John figured if they asked first, they get it. And then he goes on to say something incredibly important and something that the disciples probably would never have thought of, even though they spent all those years with him. He says this, you know that the rulers in this world lord it over their people, and officials flaunt their authority over those under them. But among you, it will be different. Whoever wants to be a leader among you must first be your servant. And whoever wants to be first among you must be the slave of everyone. For even the Son of Man came not to be served, but to serve others and give his life as a ransom for others. Jesus tells us here, if you want to be something in the kingdom, you have to be the servant. Even goes further and uses the word slave. You have to be willing to take on the job that others don't want to have, that others think is beneath them. And you look at the rulers of the world today. Look at the politicians in our culture today and around the world. Almost all of them think they're really special, particularly the ones who are making the most noise. Look at me, look at me. See, I'm a this, I'm a that. Pay attention to me. Don't you even dare think I'm just a normal guy. Excuse me. It's understandable that human beings, many of them, want to be in charge. And many times they don't even ask or understand what they're trying to be in charge of. Jesus says to James and John, you don't know what you're asking for. He knows, but they don't. So many times we ask God for things that we don't really know what we're going to get. And we ought to be more in line with waiting to see what happens. Even the other 10 were upset. And what were they upset about? Well, probably because James and John dared to ask for that spot, and they probably wanted it too. Did they deserve it? Of course they did. Any one of them did. But the lesson from here is that we have to be a servant. You don't get to be in charge. Well, let me rephrase that. You don't get to be a great in charge person if you haven't learned the humility of serving the rest. Now, I know a lot in our society don't look at it that way, but that's the way Jesus looked at it. So, what about you today? Are you one of these who has to be first? That's not good. Or are you one of those who think you deserve to be last? Well, that's not good either. One is being full of yourself. The other is refusing to accept that you're worthful. God wants us to willingly choose to serve others. And in doing so, we rise not so much in the status and hierarchy of Christians, but we rise in the vision, the sight of God as to who we are and what we are. And there are many ways to be the servant. There are many ways to let others go first. And perhaps you're one of those who just been beat down most of your life. And that's no plan either. God has something special for each of us, for you, for me. But we'll never find it if we're seeking to be the first in line. Let God elevate you to that spot, not yourself. I don't know how that works out in many people's lives, but if you think about it, you'll figure it out. Thanks for listening. Appreciate your time. If you have a need or a concern, let us know, and we'll be working as fast as we can to help meet your need. Thanks so much for listening. Hope you have a fantastic day. God bless you. I'll be back tomorrow with another lesson here.